Have you ever felt like being sensitive is like living without skin in a world full of thorns? That feeling where every harsh word cuts deeper, every disapproving look echoes for days. Every family conflict transforms into an internal storm that seems to have no end. Maybe you recognize yourself in those moments when criticism at work follows you all the way to bedtime. Or when an argument with someone you love makes your chest tighten as if the air had become thicker. Emotional sensitivity isn't a factory defect. It's not a sign that you need to be fixed or that there's something wrong with the way you feel. Actually, it represents an extraordinary ability to perceive layers of human experience that many others simply can't access. When you get emotional watching a movie, when a song makes you cry, or when you can sense a friend's sadness before they even talk about it, you're demonstrating a rare ability to connect with life. The problem isn't your sensitivity, but how we learn to deal with it. Since we were small, many of us heard phrases like "stop crying," "you're too sensitive," "life isn't a bed of roses." These words, even coming from those who love us, planted in us the idea that feeling too much is a problem. But what if I told you that this emotional intensity might just be what's most powerful about you? Think about how many times your sensitivity allowed you to help someone, comfort a person in difficulty, or notice when something wasn't right even when everyone said everything was normal. Your sensitivity is like a highly developed emotional radar, capable of picking up signals that others don't even notice. The challenge isn't to diminish this ability, but to learn to handle it with more wisdom and self-compassion. We live in a culture that celebrates emotional coldness as if it were synonymous with strength. We admire people who don't get rattled by anything, who don't take any crap, who can move forward as if nothing had happened. This glorification of emotional toughness creates a world where those who feel too much see themselves as inadequate, as if they were born on the wrong planet. But look around you. See how many people are suffering in silence, how many relationships have become superficial, how much loneliness exists even in the middle of crowds. Is this emotional coldness we so admire really taking us to a better place? Or are we losing something essential about the human experience when we try to numb our hearts? The sensitivity you carry is like a bridge to dimensions of life that many will never be able to access. It's experiencing life in high definition while others see it in black and white. This doesn't mean that living with this intensity is easy. There are days when you probably wish you had a volume button to turn down the intensity of everything you feel. Moments when you look at people apparently immune to emotional turbulence and think how nice it would be to be like that. But remember, they also don't feel the depth of joy, connection, and beauty that you experience. They don't have access to the emotional richness that your sensitivity provides. The journey to a fuller life begins with an act of profound acceptance, recognizing that your sensitivity isn't something that needs to be cured, diminished, or hidden. It's a fundamental characteristic of who you are, as natural as the color of your eyes or the tone of your voice. Trying to suppress it is like trying to contain a river. The water always finds a way to flow, sometimes creating even more devastating floods. In analytical psychology, there's a concept called individuation, the process of becoming truly who you are, integrating all aspects of your personality instead of rejecting them. When you accept your sensitivity, you're taking a fundamental step in this process. You're saying yes to an essential part of yourself that may have been denied for years. Think about how many times you've tried to be different. How many times you forced yourself to not care about comments that hurt you, or tried to pretend that certain situations didn't affect you. Remember the exhaustion that caused? It was like wearing a mask all day. In the end, you'd get home completely drained, not just from the normal challenges of the day, but from the constant effort of being someone you're not. Self-compassion is fundamental in this acceptance process. When you make the mistake of getting emotional in a situation where others remained unmoved, instead of criticizing yourself, try treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a dear friend. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Instead of, why am I like this? This shift in perspective transforms sensitivity from a source of shame into a source of self-knowledge. Accepting your sensitivity also means recognizing the unique value it brings to the world. You're probably the person others turn to when they need genuine understanding. You can offer comfort in a way that touches people's hearts because you truly understand what it means to suffer. Your capacity for empathy is a rare gift in a society that has often forgotten how to truly connect. There's a fundamental difference between controlling emotions and repressing them. Repressing is like shoving trash under the rug. Eventually, the smell will show up. Controlling, on the other hand, is like learning to surf. You don't try to stop the waves, but develop the skill to navigate them with grace and balance. The Buddhist practice of mindfulness offers an extraordinary tool for sensitive people. Instead of running from intense emotions or trying to numb them, you learn to observe them like someone watching clouds passing in the sky. When anger arises because someone was rude to you, instead of exploding or trying to suffocate the feeling, you can simply notice, anger is here. I feel it as heat in my chest, tension in my muscles. This conscious observation creates a space between you and the emotion, a space where choice becomes possible. Imagine that your emotions are like visitors knocking on your door. Repressing them would be like pretending no one's home while they keep knocking louder and louder. Consciously controlling them would be like opening the door, acknowledging who's there, listening to what they have to say, but consciously deciding whether you'll invite them in to stay or thank them for the visit and gently send them away. When you learn to respond instead of just react, something magical happens in your relationships. That argument that always escalated into a fight can transform into a productive conversation. That criticism that used to make you defensive can become an opportunity for genuine reflection. You discover that it's possible to keep your heart open without becoming an easy target. That you can be sensitive without being vulnerable in a destructive way. Serenity isn't the absence of intense emotions, but the presence of awareness that embraces emotions without being dominated by them. It's like having an internal anchor that keeps you stable, even when emotional storms arrive. And believe me, this skill can be developed. Every time you choose conscious response instead of automatic reaction, you're strengthening this muscle of serenity. For a sensitive mind, the present can be both a refuge and a challenge. It's a refuge because it's the only place where peace truly exists, not in painful memories that insist on revisiting your mind, nor in worries about the future that may never materialize. But it can also be a challenge because in the present, you feel everything more intensely, without the filters of time to soften the experiences. Breathing is your most reliable tool for the present moment. When you feel emotions are taking you away, whether to the past, where that word hurt, or to the future, where you imagine all possible scenarios of a situation, return to your breathing. It doesn't need to be anything elaborate. Simply inhale and exhale, feeling the air entering and leaving your lungs. It's like coming home after a long trip. Think about how many times you've lived through difficult moments, not once, but dozens of times. First when they happened, then every time your mind brought them back. When your mother said that phrase that hurt you, you suffered in that moment. But how many other times did you suffer remembering, reliving, analyzing every word? The present frees you from this temporal prison. That argument is over. That disappointment is memory. Here and now, breathing, you're safe. The same thing happens with anxieties about the future. Your sensitive mind can create detailed scenarios of everything that could go wrong. In tomorrow's meeting, in the relationship that's starting, in the difficult conversation you need to have. But all these fears exist only in your imagination. In the present, that meeting hasn't happened yet. That relationship is still unfolding. That conversation is still a possibility, not a reality. Living in the present doesn't mean ignoring lessons from the past or not preparing for the future. It means not allowing either one to steal the peace that's available now. When you train your mind to inhabit the present, you discover that most of your fears lose their power because they depend on time to exist. In the now, often, you're safer than you imagine. There's something deeply healing about transforming internal emotional turmoil into words on paper. For sensitive people, writing isn't just a hobby or a form of communication. It's an emotional survival tool. When you put your feelings into words, something magical happens. They leave the realm of chaos and enter the kingdom of understanding. Often, when you're in the middle of an emotional storm, everything seems confusing and overwhelming. You feel anger, sadness, frustration, disappointment, all mixed in a boiling cauldron that you can't untangle. But when you sit with a blank paper or computer screen and start writing, without judgment, without hurry, just letting the words flow, the feelings begin to separate and organize themselves naturally. Think about the last time you were really upset about some situation. Maybe it was an argument with someone close, a frustration at work, or just that indefinable feeling that something wasn't right in your life. If you had stopped in that moment to write about what you were feeling, you probably would have discovered layers of emotions you didn't even know existed. Maybe you'd realize that behind the anger there was hurt, or that beneath the sadness there was a deep longing for something you couldn't even name. The journal becomes a mirror of your soul, reflecting patterns you might not notice otherwise. You might discover that you always get irritated by the same type of comment, that certain emotional triggers appear repeatedly, or that some specific dates always bring melancholy. This awareness is power. When you know your patterns, you can start working with them instead of being dominated by them. Don't worry about grammar, style, or coherence when you write. Let the words come out as they want to come out, even if disconnected or repetitive. The goal isn't to create literature, but to create freedom. Sometimes, a single writing session can provide more clarity than weeks of mental rumination. It's as if you were talking to an infinitely patient friend who never judges you and always has time to listen. One of the biggest traps for sensitive people is the tendency to interpret others' words and actions as personally directed attacks. When someone is in a bad mood and responds curtly, you immediately think, "What did I do wrong?" When a friend cancels a get-together, your mind whispers, "They don't like me anymore." When you receive criticism at work, you hear, "You're inadequate." But here's a liberating truth. Most of the time, people's words and actions say much more about them than about you. That colleague who was rude might be dealing with problems at home. That friend who seemed distant might be dealing with their own insecurities. That sharp comment might have come from a person who's hurt inside and doesn't know how to express their pain any other way. This doesn't mean excusing inappropriate behavior or accepting disrespect. It means understanding that you're not the center of other people's emotional universe in the way you imagine. Paradoxically, this understanding is simultaneously humbling and liberating. Humbling because it wounds the ego that likes to think everything revolves around you. Liberating because it frees you from the weight of carrying responsibility for others' emotional states. Buddhism, for example, teaches about detachment, not in the sense of not caring, but in the sense of not clinging so tightly to outcomes that you lose your inner peace. When you can hear criticism and think, "Interesting perspective, I'll consider if there's something useful here for me," instead of, "I'm being attacked," you develop extraordinary emotional freedom. Practice observing your own bad moments. How many times have you been rude to someone not because that person did something terrible, but because you were tired, stressed, worried about other issues? This awareness of your own humanity helps you have more compassion for others' failures and not personalize every less than perfect interaction. Understanding where your emotional sensitivity comes from is like having a map in unknown territory. It doesn't eliminate the challenges, but it gives you valuable guidance on how to navigate through them. Some people are naturally born more sensitive. It's part of their basic constitution, like having brown eyes or being left-handed. Others develop this sensitivity as a response to life experiences. Maybe you grew up in a family where emotions were very intense. Frequent arguments, episodes of anger or deep sadness that taught you to always be alert to emotional signals around you. Or maybe the opposite happened. A family where emotions were completely suppressed, forcing you to develop an ultra-sensitive antenna to pick up what no one was saying verbally. Some people become emotionally sensitive after difficult experiences. A romantic betrayal that left the heart more exposed. The loss of someone important that intensified awareness of life's fragility. Or periods of loneliness that amplified the need for genuine connection. It's not about blaming the past, but understanding how it shaped your current way of experiencing the world. Investigating these roots isn't an exercise in self-pity, although it certainly can awaken compassion for yourself. It's an exercise in self-knowledge that can transform your relationship with your own sensitivity. When you understand why you react in certain ways to certain triggers, you can start consciously choosing how you want to respond in the future. For example, if you discover that your tendency to get easily hurt by criticism comes from a childhood where love seemed conditional on your performance, that awareness can help you separate current criticism from old pain. You can start hearing feedback as information instead of as an attack on your worth as a person. That's the difference between reacting from unhealed wounds and responding from present wisdom. Having a sensitive heart without healthy strategies to process emotions is like driving a powerful car without knowing how to use the brakes. The intensity is there, but you need tools to navigate it safely. Fortunately, there are simple and accessible practices that can transform your relationship with emotional life. Meditation doesn't need to be complicated or esoteric. It can be as simple as sitting in silence for 5 minutes paying attention to your breathing. For sensitive people, these moments of quietude are like a pause to recharge emotional batteries. After a day absorbing energies and emotions around you, a few minutes of silence can make all the difference between going to sleep overloaded or at peace. Conscious breathing is a tool you can use anywhere, anytime. When you feel emotions are intensifying, in an argument, in a stressful situation, or simply when life seems too heavy, stop and breathe deeply 3 times. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. This simple technique activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for calm and relaxation. Silent walks, especially in nature, have special healing power for sensitive hearts. Movement releases natural endorphins, while connection with the natural environment provides a bigger perspective on your problems. Often, solutions that seemed impossible at home appear naturally during a reflective walk. Talking with trusted people isn't a sign of weakness, but of emotional wisdom. Choose these people carefully. Those who can listen without judging, who offer perspective without trying to solve everything for you. Sometimes, simply verbalizing what you're feeling to someone who really listens can bring extraordinary relief and a clarity that solitary thinking can't provide. When you stop fighting against your sensitivity and start working with it, something beautiful happens. It transforms from a source of suffering into a source of deep wisdom. The same characteristics that once seemed to be your greatest weaknesses reveal themselves as your unique superpowers. Your ability to feel deeply gives you access to an understanding of human experience that many people never achieve. When someone is suffering, you don't need to guess how they feel. You can feel along with them in a way that offers genuine comfort. This natural empathy makes you an extraordinary friend, partner, colleague, and human being. Sensitivity also develops your intuition exceptionally. Because you're always picking up subtle signals, changes in tone of voice, almost imperceptible facial expressions, environmental energies, you often know things before they become obvious to others. This intuition can guide you in important decisions, alert you to problematic situations, or simply help you navigate the world with more wisdom. By accepting your sensitivity and using practices like mindfulness and self-compassion, everything changes. It stops being a chaotic storm. It becomes a deep ocean of understanding. You discover that you can dive into these emotional waters without drowning, exploring the depths without losing your way back to the surface. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process of making peace with who you are, of learning to navigate your internal waters with more skill, of discovering that your sensitivity can be a reliable compass for a more authentic and meaningful life. By choosing self-compassion instead of self-criticism, you grow. By responding instead of reacting, you evolve. By using your sensitivity as a bridge for connection instead of a protective wall, you transform. We've reached the end of this conversation, but actually this is just the beginning of a much deeper journey. If you've made it this far, you probably recognize something of yourself in these words. Maybe you felt that relief that comes from being truly understood, or that hope that arises when we realize we're not alone in our experience. Being emotionally sensitive in a world that often values toughness is like having a heart that can see colors others don't even know exist. It's having access to dimensions of human experience that are simultaneously painful and beautiful, challenging and revealing. In the tradition of psychological alchemy, the process of transforming the raw lead of difficult experiences into the gold of wisdom. Your journey as a sensitive person is, itself, an alchemical process. Each pain processed consciously becomes compassion. Each moment of vulnerability embraced transforms into authentic strength. Each tear shed with awareness waters the garden of your soul, allowing flowers of wisdom and love to bloom. Remember, you have a heart capable of seeing the invisible, of feeling what many ignore, of perceiving nuances of human experience that go unnoticed by most. This isn't a curse, it's a calling to bring more empathy, understanding, and genuine connection to a world that desperately needs these qualities. If these words touch something in you, if you recognized your own journey in this conversation, know that there are practical tools to deepen this transformation. The exclusive Alchemy and Archetypes ebook here on the channel offers exercises that can help you. And if this video brought some comfort to your soul, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Not out of obligation, but because together we can create a space where sensitive souls feel at home, where emotional depth is celebrated instead of feared, where people like you know they're not alone in this journey that's so particular and at the same time, so universal.